All right, the Biden administration has repeatedly dismissed the idea that enhanced unemployment benefits are fueling the labor shortage. And while he still pins the blame on other areas after another lackluster job report, the president on Friday said the benefits will now expire by September. His announcement comes one day after Republicans on the House Ways and Means Committee released some eye-popping numbers on just how much government assistance Congress has approved since the pandemic. With me now to talk more about the analysis and much more is Congressman Kevin Brady, the ranking member of the House Ways and Means Committee. He represents the 8th Congressional District of the Lone Star State. Congressman Brady, welcome back to the program.
Good to see you, Tony. Thanks for having me.
Now, these numbers are astounding. Walk us through some of these numbers in terms of what your analysis looked at when we look at what the average family in America received through the crisis funding in the wake of the pandemic.
Well, first, let me just say, I don't know why my face is this red. I would be more embarrassed given exactly what the American government has sent to people. Bottom line is, obviously, we need to help a lot of folks through this pandemic, and we did as a government. But I think right now, with the president looking at another multi-trillion-dollar stimulus package and Democrats in Congress wanting a fourth and a fifth stimulus check, right now, I think people would be stunned to find out our analysis shows that a family of four, average family of four, where both parents lost their jobs, Congress has already approved more than $109,000 in government checks for that family. Even a family with just one parent out of work, more than $67,000 already. And even with that, as you said, our April and May jobs reports were stunningly bad. In fact, at this point, 5 months into the new president's term, he has already 500,000 jobs less added than President Trump did during his last 5 months, some of that during the height of the COVID pandemic. And so clearly what the president's policies are is really slowing, really hurting this jobs recovery.
I mean, you look at these numbers, Congressman Brady, and you have to ask the question, where's the incentive to go back to work?
Yeah, there really isn't right now. One, the extra federal bonus on top of what states pay means about 4 out of every 10 Americans get paid more to stay home than to go to work. We're seeing that certainly along Main Street for months now. You're hearing this from manufacturers, corporations, all along that production line. They simply can't find the people they need to work. And a new poll just a couple days old shows that 90% of businesses surveyed said the local economy is being hurt because they cannot reconnect these workers with good jobs. And that too, while the president said that ends in September, he still has an executive order in place today that says if you're not comfortable going back to work for reasons, you can just sort of certify yourself and receive those extra federal benefits, even if the state has decided you're not eligible. So the fact of the matter is the president is sending mixed signals, to say the least.
And it really handcuffs the economy because I've been, as I traveled, I was out west this last week, and you go into an establishment and almost every place I've been, shorthanded, and people just get fed up. They just leave. And so that's hurting these small businesses because they can't have the number of people they need working in there because they can't find people because there's no incentive.
Yeah, there is not. And I neglected to mention it, and you did. In many cases, people are getting unemployed, are getting better healthcare subsidies at home than they would at work. Another incentive to stay home. And at the end of the day, it's hurting this jobs recovery. We're seeing it in the numbers. And of course, that's before we see President Biden's just crippling tax increases, which I think are already having an impact on the economy as businesses know it's going to hammer them.
And look, I think the American people would say, look, people who really need help, we want to help them. I mean, that's kind of the way that America works. But we're now seeing that this might, I mean, the evidence is in. While the short-term benefit for some may be there, there's a long-term effect of this, and we're seeing it, as you talked about. The supply chains are being disrupted. We don't have people out there to make cars. We've got all these cars. I mean, almost the car lots are empty because they're missing chips in a lot of these cars and trucks that have been produced. They can't. So the salesmen can't work. The car dealerships can't work. You've got lumber prices that are skyrocketing. So you don't have builders building houses. So this is going to have a long-term effect. It might be an initial shot in the arm, but long-term, I have to think this is going to hurt the economy.
Yeah, it will. And to your point, I think the best way we can help families rebuild their lives and to rebuild our U.S. economy, is not through more emergency spending and endless government checks. It's through reconnecting people with work. And that, too, is not just short term, but as you've made the point many times before, it is so important for children to see their parents, working. It sets a work ethic. It pulls them out of poverty. We saw after the President Trump's and Republican tax cuts, we saw a lot of people who'd been left behind on the sidelines suddenly seeing job opportunities, pay raises, a growth in their household income that they hadn't seen for years and years. That's how we help people.
Well, and let me underscore that was real income growth. I mean, they actually saw gains that they hadn't seen in decades. So it wasn't just more dollars in the check, it was more spending power. Yep. What my concern here is now, Congressman Brady, is that as we see this delay of people entering back into the workforce because of this artificial stimulated economy through government spending, we're seeing a rise in prices. Inflation is beginning to creep up. Costs are going through the roof. People are going to go back to work, and they're going to have less buying power than they did before because of this government spending.
They will, and there's no question. This is so Washington right now reminds me less of a pandemic fighter than a college kids on an extended spring break. It is party now, hangover tomorrow. But the worry is we're already starting to see some of that hangover in these inflation prices. We're going to see more. It's going to cost more to borrow, whether it's for college or for a home or for a car. And ultimately, the president's own budget that he released a little sneakily over the Memorial Day weekend, they predict that after this sugar high is done, that America's growth for the next decade will be as slow as it was during the Obama-Biden administration. And that was terribly disappointing. Paychecks weren't going up, jobs were moving overseas, not a lot of opportunities for young people coming out of school. So he is actually putting us on a path backward to some pretty bad economic days.
Of course, we know that the reason for that, or at least what we're going to be told, is that was the Trump administration that has put us on that trajectory, even though we saw the opposite, strongest economy because of cutting taxes, which you helped lead in Congress, and the reduction of government regulation. Those two things combined created jobs, grew the economy, and put more money into people's pockets.
It did, without doubt. It lifted people out of poverty, millions of Americans out of poverty, started to shrink income inequality for the first time in half a century. In 2019, this is fascinating. So in 2019, that 1 year, household incomes, sort of what your family budget of is, went up more in one year than in all 8 years of the Obama-Biden administration. President Trump, the business community, the free market achieved that, not government. And you would think right now with President Biden, he inherited strong recovery. He has life-saving vaccines, an economy that's reopening, and he can't create as many jobs as President Trump did during the height of the pandemic. That tells you this leadership is wrong.
Elections have consequences, and I would
doubt.
hope the American people are seeing that in real time, unfortunately, play out before them. Congressman Kevin Brady, always great to talk with you. Thanks for helping us walk through these numbers and see the effect of government spending.
Thank you, sir. Take care, Tony.
All right, Kevin, good to see you.